and welcome to the latest edition of the Moviescramble podcast. With me today, as usual, the ever-dependent Mary. Mary, how the hell are you doing?
I am really good. I've had a really good week because the sun has been out, and I'm so looking forward to discussing this because I think it's, I don't want to, jinx things so far. I think it's like top 10 of the year material. I really enjoyed this film.
A wee teaser there for what we're going to be talking about and what we actually think about it before we've actually started. This is a wee extra one that we're doing in that I think on the last one we said we were going to be taking a look at the new Omen film, but due to circumstances beyond our control, in that our third wheel, the ever hairy Thomas, was unable to take part in the podcast, so we're going to rearrange that one hopefully at some point during the week, and we'll get that one out after this one. So today we are going to be talking about the 2023 film Late Night with the Devil.
You know, here on Night Owls, we think it's very important to keep an open mind. Please welcome Dr. June Ross Mitchell and Lily, the young subject of the book, Conversations with the Devil.
I really don't think it's a good idea, Jack. She's becoming more unpredictable.
That's a good thing. That's why we still do live TV. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for a live television first as we attempt to commune with the devil.
The film is directed by the Cairns brothers, Cameron and Colin, who are also the writers. It stars, now I know I'm going to get this wrong, David Dastmalchian. Am I even in the right ballpark?
I listened to him do a clip for a Glasgow Film Festival to wish it a happy birthday, and he pronounces his name David Dastmalchian.
Dastmalchian. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying fair enough.
I actually went and researched this because I knew we were going to be talking about him, so I wanted to have it spot on.
Makes sense. He is the lead in this film. Now, the story of the film itself is that this is a fake documentary behind the scenes film about a late night talk show called Night Owls, and in particular an episode from Halloween in 1977 where things went awry. David I'm going to get this wrong. Dalmalchian. I'll get it right. David Dalmalchian plays the lead character of Jack, who is the talk show host of Night Owls, a talk show that's been going for about 5 years or so and is in a little bit of trouble in that it's not getting the ratings that it necessarily needs, and it's possibly going to get cancelled. So in an effort to boost ratings, they've been trying to do various things, and obviously if it's a Halloween episode, then they are going to try and do something a bit more supernatural. It all starts out very well when they bring out a medium, a seer, a psychic, if you like, to come out and interact with the audience. I'm hearing an M. Anybody know anybody with an M? That kind of thing. And then they bring out a skeptic who's a former conjurer, I believe they said he was, in order to refute his claims. And then they bring out the main event, which is a young girl who is claimed to have been possessed by a demon, not the devil, a demon. It's made very clear that even though it says Late Night with the Devil in the title of the film, it's not the devil. It should really be a devil, Late Night with a Devil. But never mind. This is an Australian-American film, as I say, was released in 2023, debuted at South by Southwest, and has since been given a sort of limited run and is now available on the streaming service Shudder in the UK, and I believe everywhere else. I think it was released in America like 2-3 days before it actually came here. So, Mary, you wrote a review of the film when it played as part of was it part of Fright Fest or was it outside of Fright Fest? Strand and
This was just in regular old cinema. Wasn't part of Fright Fest that I saw it, so I just managed to catch it in Cineworld before it disappeared.
All right, okay. I thought maybe it had been on at the film festival as well. I don't know if it had. I thought maybe it had. But anyway, so you caught it and you wrote the review of the site. What are your initial thoughts on the film?
So I think I went into it because the poster is quite dramatic, right? It's David Dismotion in a suit and his head is on fire. So I think I went into it expecting a lot of jump scares and being made to feel uncomfortable because I don't like when they do creepy things with people's eyes. And I was really pleasantly surprised because it's not a film that goes in for tricks. Like, yes, there are elements of it where you could absolutely say it's trying to scare you, whatever. But I think it's one of these films that it sets itself up as found footage. It roots itself in real life events. So the satanic panic that was going on, in the 70s. And that kind of gives it this sort of edge where you're going into it thinking this is very believable. And also they do like really cool things where it's like magazine covers of Jack Delroy versus Johnny Carson that they've mocked up. And so it does all feel really real, which kind of adds to this found footage element. And I think what I really loved about it was for the whole period of the film, it just feels so unsettling. And you actually can't put your finger on why. Like, it's working towards something, obviously the rollout of Lily, who is the girl who's possessed by the demon. But even up until that point, Jack is on edge the entire film because his show's going to get canned. There's sort of red herrings, I think, throughout about, is there a plant in the audience? Is there this? Is there that? And then obviously it builds towards this big sort of display of demonic possession. But what I really, really loved about it was it felt authentic. It felt rooted in truth. The costume and the set design I felt were really spot on for the era it was trying to portray. And actually, it never felt gimmicky. It did just feel really unsettling, really creepy. And you were just kind of wondering, where the hell is this going? And I really like a horror like that that's not sort of out and out, making you jump out of your skin every 5 minutes, because who has the energy for that? But I loved how unsettling it was and how it's kind of playing with your expectations a little bit as to what might happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The runtime of the film is only 90 minutes, so I think that's one reason why you are kind of kept on edge, because it doesn't dwell on any one part because there's something else it wants to move on to. It's quite a propulsive film. It wants to get to the end, and it doesn't want any sort of extraneous stuff that will bring the tempo of the film down or take away from the main elements of it. I really enjoyed the setup of it, the 70s setup. That was very well done. And like you say, the main character is on edge for most of the time for two reasons. One is because of his wife, which was her demise was talked about in the initial elements of the film. And the other one is because it's Sweeps Week. Now, Sweeps Week is when American TV shows are part of a ratings battle, if you like. That's when things are decided about whether shows are renewed and stuff. I don't know if it happens so much anymore. It seems to, obviously, because in the age of streaming and everything, it's all slightly different, the way that shows are renewed and cancelled and things like that. But I think for a lot of these shows, Sweeps Week is when it used to be they got their money for following seasons. And obviously, he's at the end of his contract, so he doesn't know what's going to happen if this isn't successful. If he doesn't actually pull something out of the bag right away, then he's not going to be able to continue doing what he's doing. And you kind of get the feeling that he doesn't really know what he can do apart from that. So there's that. He is on edge about it kind of all the time. So what did you think about the very start? Now, the film opens with a sort of like a video montage. It sets up the period, it sets up the main character in Jack, and it basically gives you it's basically an exposition dump. It tells you this is everything you need to know before we show you this found master recording of the television show. Now, I should say the way that the majority of the film is made up is it's like a studio broadcast, and in the parts in between where they go to like their messages, sponsors, adverts. There is behind the scenes footage, which is shot in black and white, which is quite a nice wee touch. So, but it starts off by saying, this is the 70s. There's Richard Nixon. There's all the stuff that's happening. There's Vietnam, and like say, the magazine images and all that. But the majority of that is in black and white as well, because it's all just photographs, still photos, with a voiceover by, I'll need to look that up because...
It's the guy from Starship Troopers.
Yes, it is. It is. And I cannot remember
his name, though.
So, but yes, it's done really well, and it's all kind of matter-of-factly, because it's trying to bring people in a fake way into the world, because it's like a fake documentary that is promoting, and it's also bringing the real audience into it as well, because they're kind of going, right, well, this is happening, right? And it talks about all these things about like ratings wars and pictures of Johnny Carson, and it says, oh yeah, he was a member of the Grove, which was this society, which is based on a real secret society, which had, I think it was like 3 presidents and sort of high-powered businessmen and all that, and it's a very sort of secretive society from the 70s and 80s as well. So there's kind of wee elements in there as well. So how did you think that set it up? Was it well done? Was it kind of what it needed?
Yeah, I think it definitely needed that sort of 5-minute, as you say, exposition dump to go, here's all of the information that you need to know before you watch the remaining 85 minutes or whatever it is. And I think for me, I thought it set it up perfectly. It reminded me of, I read that John Ronson book, Them, and it talks about the Bilderberg group and how they meet in the forest and how there's all these rumors of it. And so I was like, straight away, I was really bought into this notion that he was part of this secret society. They show him signing the contract with the television channel, and it's almost like straight away you get this sense that it's like you've sold your soul. That's what you've done when you've signed the contract, because, him and his wife are sort of almost like America's sweetheart territory. And then it talks about how her demise was quite violent in the type of cancer that she had and how ill she was. And then obviously it was like, well, his career was teetering on the brink because he'd taken time off to mourn, the loss of his wife. And so you're set up with this man who is potentially fragile for a number of reasons, right? He's lost his wife, his TV career's probably down the shitter as well. The attempts that he has had to try and regain the popularity of his show since he came back from bereavement leave have all been terrible, because he's gone straight down the gimmick route. Yeah. Nothing's worked. And then, you meet him and he's not quite the sort of, I've seen David Dismulsion and things, and he's always very good. But if somebody said to you like 70s charismatic late night TV show host, he's probably not the person you would think of, but he is perfect in this part. And I think it's because there's all these layers of the backstory, which is, the trauma, the death, the potentially Faustian pact that he's just made with the television channel. All of these layers are sort of adding into his character. So when we do first meet him and he is really on edge, it makes you on edge as well. And that's why it works. Because yes, you've got the backstory feeding into why this character is the way he is. But there's also his performance really draws you into something's not right here, and I don't know what it is, but he looks nervous, so I should be nervous, because there is this assumption that as a TV host he's in control. And I loved the fact that the aspect ratio changes slightly from when they're going from live TV to the behind the scenes cut, and obviously it cuts into black and white as well. I thought it needed that 5-minute bit of homework before you could actually really kick into the TV show, and it was just the right amount of information to allow you to enjoy the rest of the film without being overly, here's some clues for what's going to happen later sort of thing. It was just enough information to get you interested and hooked from the offset of the live broadcast, in inverted commas.
No, I believe that worked very well, and they used the same type of technique later on as well, which worked perfectly because it worked very well within the format of a chat show. Because if you have somebody on in a chat show that you don't know, and you don't know anything about them, then there might be a wee bit of film about them just to explain what they do. Now, they had that with Carmichael when he came on. They had a wee, it was maybe just about a minute, And then before the girl came on as well, there was a piece about the satanic church and everything sort of surrounding that as well. And that worked really well. And it was just wee tiny bits, and it didn't draw you out of the film in any way because it was part of the TV broadcast. It wasn't somebody interjecting and saying, and at this point, you know, we are introduced to Carmichael, and Carmichael has it. You know, it was done in a organic way, if you like, because it felt like something you would see in a TV broadcast. So that was quite clever as well, and it's a clever way of making use of existing types of ways of passing information, because it's done in exactly the same way as you would pass information on a TV show. You know, if you're on a chat show, then you might say, oh, you know, like on the One Show, cut to camera and have a wee bit about whatever nonsense it is that they show. Because I can't imagine there being a Halloween special on the One Show for at any point.
No.
But yes, I thought it was particularly effective the way that they did that. Yeah. What did you think of the characterizations? Now, you've mentioned David Dalmatian before, but in his career, he has had very few leading roles. Most of the time, he has been a supporting actor in whatever he's done. He's done a few superhero films. He was in Justice League. He has also he was in 2 of the Ant-Man films as well. So he has been about, and he has mainly played these roles where he is in the background. He has a few minutes, you know, in the spotlight. But I mean, if you look back at his filmography, there's very little where he actually is right up there. Notably played John Deacon in Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Have you ever seen that? No. Yeah. He plays John Deacon, the bass player from Queen, in it. And he's only on screen for about 2 minutes. And it's really good because Weird Al is challenged by Wolfman Jack, I think it is, at a pool party to come up with a parody song on the spot. And he says, and my friend John Deacon will do it. And he goes, hi, I'm John Deacon from Queen. Can you make a song out of this? And he starts playing the bass line to Another One Bites the Dust, and he does it. It's really anyway. I completely I'm diverting.
Yeah, no, he's definitely not. He's not maybe what you call your typical leading man. And actually, and I've said this, you know, you think of 70s sort of charismatic chat show host, and you probably don't think of him as a performer. But actually, that's not what's needed here. You needed someone who's on edge and capable of conveying that sort of layers of, you know, trauma, whatever you want to call it, you know, panic over losing his career, the grief of losing his wife. So you need someone who's actually capable of delivering all these layers. And it does work. You know, there's a lot to be said for obviously costume and hair and makeup and stuff like that. And I think that, you know, he's got the sort of slick kind of side shed hairdo, and he's in this sort of nice fitted beige suit and all that sort of thing. So he does really, really look the part. You know, if you saw that on as a sort of image and you said, you know, this is a TV host from the 1970s, you would absolutely assume that was the thing. But I think that he actually doesn't need to be that sort of charismatic leading. I mean, he does do a couple of sort of jokes to camera where there's like the little live band that he's got to do the wee sort of drum beat after it, and he does that wee kind of wink, and it is a bit cheeky. But actually, that's not what's needed here, because he's almost on the viewer's side, and by that I mean actually us seated in the cinema, because he doesn't know what's about to unfold as much as we don't, and he's hinging his entire career on these 4 guests, that he's brought on, and he's nervous. He needs it to go right as well, and that's why when all of it starts to unravel, and he does with it, it's interesting how you get the insights of him on camera, and then there's the behind the scenes chat where he's thinking that his career is maybe getting a bit better because the guests have performed exactly the way that they thought, and you can actually see the relief on him, because I think he's meant to feel desperate and a little bit sort of frenzied, because that's the energy that this whole film has. So I think that's why it works. And I think, again, because he's not your sort of typical leading man and he's therefore not necessarily a big name per se, although I'm quite sure that he's got a hardy audience of fans. I just mean that if it had been somebody who maybe perhaps is seen to be a bit more leading man, I think it would take away from the fact that this feels authentic and it feels genuine and it does feel like found footage. I think if there'd been big names in it, it would have kind of ruined it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. A lot of times if you have a big name in it, then there's certain expectations about what they're going to do, and sometimes their style overrides everything else. Whereas here, he came across like a chat show host very, very well. It didn't seem to be forced in any way, his performance, because it was like you say, it was two different performances he was actually giving. He was given the performance as 5-year veteran polished chat show host, and you could see that in the way that he was interacting with his studio audience. And the way that it worked was, it's like with any TV show, like a chat show, it's a multi-camera event. So you have, I think they said they filmed it like it was a chat show. They had 3 cameras simultaneously running, so therefore they were able to cut and edit it to make it look like that. But that's the way that they set these things up, especially for something like a Halloween special where things might go a wee bit weird, a wee bit strange. So they were able to do that, but he felt very natural in that environment because you believed he'd been doing that job for such a long time. It was like second nature to him. He never missed a cue about where he was supposed to be looking in terms of his camera or anything, which you think that some actors may actually bring that in because then it sort of telegraphs the fact that they're a bit nervous and they're a bit out of sorts, but he was like consummate professional all the way through. And it's like, say, when they said it was only when something drastically went wrong, which happened a few times, I must say.
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah. Then you could see the sort of the veneer sort of shatter a wee bit, and he would, he would be panicking. And then, like you say, they would cut to commercial, and you would see the real person, the real, not the real actor, the real character who was scared. He was frightened. He was a bit lost. He didn't really know what he was doing. You kind of get the impression he didn't really know what he'd kind of let himself in for from his previous actions, actually trying to get to that point, because he wasn't able to realize his goals. He was struggling, and that's not the way that it should be for someone who's regarded as being half of a power couple and on the up and up. He just never seemed to sort of get to that sort of level. So yeah, I thought it was a particularly good performance, considering he was on camera pretty much all the film. It was all
I mean, it's a big ask, especially because, as you say, there is that duality of the character. There's Jack on camera and Jack when he's on a break. And I think to carry a film like this, especially because the rest of the guests that he has on, so you've got the is it the mystic? No, not a mystic.
Well,
the mentalists that they're called. Yeah, you're kind of on his side with that because you're hoping that it goes well, and then it kind of doesn't. Then you've got the other guests and the debate going back and forth. And like I said, you're kind of with him in the sense that he's sitting there with his fingers crossed, just hoping that this show pans out the way that it needs to get him the ratings that he needs. But he also doesn't know what's going to happen because of the type of guests that he has on. There's almost a lack of control on his behalf. So he can sort of commandeer the show and go to the ad breaks at the right time and look at the right camera. But ultimately, the people that he has on the show aren't people who behave typically the way chat show guests do. They are, in some cases, performers, or in some cases, possessed by a demon. And so he has a lack of control over his own show as well. And I think you really feel that through his performance at times when, as you say, there are 1 or 2 hiccups during this chat show. And I think you really feel that loss of control, not just in the chat show, but the repercussions that loss of control has across his life and sort of bigger picture stuff. I think you really feel that off him.
What did you think of the supporting characters in this? Obviously, we have touched upon it. They come out in order, or they come out in an order because it's a chat show. So you have Christou, who is the psychic, the medium who comes out first. And then it's followed by Carmichael, who comes out and is a debunker who comes out and flourishes the check for $100,000 to anybody who can prove that psychics are not real, or they can no that's wrong. That it's anybody who can prove that the supernatural is real, if they can bring some sort of solid proof to it. Apparently he was based on a real character, a guy who did that and was on chat shows like Johnny Carson, who had this check, and it started off at $10,000 and it went up to $1 million at one point. And there's quite a nice wee story about that, because the guy basically spent his entire career on debunking. He started off in the same sort of area, but then went on to sort of debunk them all. There was a guy called James Randi, R-A-N-D-I, who basically proved that there was no afterlife, because after he died, there was an obituary written about him which was really scathing, and he never came back to question the obituary. So therefore there's no afterlife, so therefore he couldn't come back.
But do you know what though? I love stuff like that though, where again it just knots this up in another wee layer of truth and authenticity of something that actually did happen. And obviously they refer to Johnny Carson quite frequently in this as well, as if he's almost like a sort of character that you just never quite get to see. But no, I thought the supporting cast were great. It's funny because I was saying to you earlier, so I watched the Red Letter Media review of this film, and normally I, quite in agreement with what they have to say, but they really hated the Carmichael character because they thought he was really over the top and sort of vaudevillian and theatrical. But I think that's the point, because that's the background he came from. He used to be a performer himself, so I actually really liked it. The Christy character who comes on and, as you say, is like, oh, I'm getting an M or something like that, and then you find out obviously the audience have pre-filled in these cards about dead relatives and stuff like that, so you just know it's all a big scam, which I quite enjoyed. But then obviously that sort of turns on a dime, as it were, as well, because all of a sudden, his eyes roll back in his head and you're like, oh, is that part of the act, or what is that? And it's the first little flash we get of shit's about to go down, basically.
Yep.
But you're just not sure if he's credible or not. So I think that's what I really liked, because he is obviously brought on, Christy is obviously brought on as like a ham. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no way he knows all of that stuff. He's just there to, make somebody in the audience cry and think they've connected with a dead relative. But then that little moment happens with his eyes and you're going, is that part of the act, or is that something that, something's, and you're just never quite sure because he's so obviously, not telling the truth. And then you're brought on with, Carmichael, and he's sort of introduced, as you say. It reminds me of, I don't know if you remember this, there was a TV show, I think in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it was called The Masked Magician. And he used to unveil how all these tricks were done. So like sawing someone in half and all that sort of thing. So it reminded me of that type of, persona, somebody who's quite willing to sort of expose the secrets of their own industry. And he's sitting there, and I love it, he lights the cigar with just his hand, allegedly. He's got the flame coming out the top of his thumb and all this. So it's really camp and it's really over the top. But you kind of feel like the show was getting back on track. And then obviously we're introduced to June and Lily. Lily's been held in this sort of like Aleister Crowley-esque satanic cult somewhere. And that's when the film and the TV show Night Owls takes on this different turn, because Christy and Carmichael are quite obviously performers, and they're quite obviously there to be entertaining. Whereas when June appears with Lily, the whole tone shifts, not just, of us watching it, but on the actual chat show. And although Carmichael's all bluff and bluster and he's saying, I'll give you a check if you can do this, this and this, you can tell even he's slightly unnerved. And I quite liked even the fact that for all he was super confident and, intent in exposing what he believed was a sham, there were a couple of moments where you could see he was starting to doubt what he was seeing or feeling himself. So I did think it really worked. I also really liked the guy that played Gus, the sort of, I don't know what you would call him, like he was kind of in charge of the band. He kept the show running.
The sidekick. He's a mainstay in American chat shows. There's various incarnations of that type of character right through sort of chat show history. You see them not so much now with the sort of late night shows, like
Mhm.
the more recent ones, it just seems to be based around a presenter, and they have people that come on and off. Like I've been watching quite a lot of Craig Ferguson stuff online,
All right,
and
yeah,
he has a sidekick called Jeff, and Jeff's actually a robot, so it's like a sort of play on that as well. And he has a pantomime horse that comes on and off and things like that. So it's a wee bit different, but no, the sidekick was I'm sort of mainstays, like the butt of the jokes from
yeah.
the main presenter and all that. And yeah, he would be, there with the band and all this sort of stuff as well. The band leader sometimes takes that sort of role as well. But yeah, he was a good character because he was always the one that he was joked against all the time right from the start. The very first thing, he scares him because he's behind him, that kind of thing, and it just gets worse from there. And you don't know whether he's very good, because any time that something sort of cutting or biting is said to him when they're actually filming, you can't tell whether he's actually really taken to heart and he's thinking that was really hurtful, or that's just all part of his act. What he actually does, he pretends to be hurt and everything. But yeah, I thought that was a very good performance. And there was like wee elements in there where he was playing theremin, and there was the thing about, oh, you play that without not touching it. Maybe you should have done that last week when you were at that thing. So, there's all that sort of stuff.
It was so good, and he's not quite as snappily dressed as Jack and all this sort of thing. So there's a dynamic there. But I really liked them sort of playing off each other as well. I thought that worked really well. But I do think that the supporting cast, for all that they've, I mean, essentially, your Christou and your Carmichael to sort of less extent, but they maybe only have a sort of set period of screen time, as you would in a chat show, and therefore they're sort of making the most of delivering that character and what that character has to do to move the story on. Essentially, as you say, it's quite a tight 90 minutes. So I think everybody does a really, really good job with that.
Yeah, Gus, in a way, was almost like Jack's conscience, I should say, because there was two conversations that he had with him. One was where he was saying, look, you shouldn't be messing with this stuff. This is beyond just television. This is things that you don't understand, or things you shouldn't be dealing with. And there was he had a second conversation with him where he says, look, I've been backstage and there's restraints and knives. Do you really want to be doing this? So he's, in a way, he's kind of foretelling what's actually going to be happening within the third act of the film. But he's also, it's almost like Jack's conscience saying, wait a minute, the wee voice in his shoulder, maybe you shouldn't be doing this.
And equally, just the voice of sort of wider America at the time, who, because they were so caught up in this so-called, satanic panic, that nobody wanted to dabble with stuff like that, even for a wee joke, because it was like, well, there's far too many, news reports, or, a cult has sprung up or something like that. So he's kind of almost seen as the sort of the voice of like the people or the audience or whatever at that time, who, it's fine to sort of look at the spectacle, but nobody wanted it sort of in their front room, as it were. And that's exactly what it is here. There's no escaping it because it's in the studio and it's all contained. So I think he was really an interesting character for just a number of reasons. But I think that in particular was, again, he was another sort of example of, being on side with the audience. Because if I walked backstage and saw restraints and knives, I'd be like, I'm out of here. Whereas he feels so compelled to stay, almost to sort of make sure that Jack's career is okay as much as that Jack's okay.
Yeah, because his career is dependent on Jack's career being okay. So, Jack goes, he goes. So, yeah, it's all part of the package. And I think Jack reminds him of that during it, saying, your job's on the line here as well, mate. So you basically just do what you're told. So we'll move on to the production itself, the sort of the production environment and everything. So obviously it's a chat show that was set in 1977. I kind of think it looked as if it was set in 1977, the way that it was shot, the 4:3 ratio, the less than sharp visuals, because it wasn't quite as sharp as it could be, but that's kind of reflecting sort of the quality of TV that was actually broadcast at the time. So for me, the production values worked really well because they'd obviously put a lot of thought into it. Apparently, they'd somebody who worked in sort of live TV during the 70s, and that was the kind of way that it worked. So they had them actually working on the production as well. Do you think it worked? And also, could you explain the role of or the controversy of AI in the production as well?
So I think it worked. Again, I watched the Red Letter Media thing, and they said it wasn't grainy enough. They didn't feel like it went far enough with the visuals. I actually think that this film has to toe quite a tricky line because it has to look the part but still be watchable enough for contemporary audience who are obviously used to, gloss and HD. So I think it does that perfectly. Interestingly, I saw a random clip the other week of Bruce Forsyth presenting, I think it was The Price is Right, and the suit and the background were almost identical. It was that brown, yellow, beige, maybe the odd streak of blue. And I was like, wow, that film really got it like spot on. And I think it was just, you looked at it, and obviously I wasn't around in the 70s, although I probably looked like I was. But for me, I felt visually it really, really struck a great note. I thought the actual set design was really authentic. So it all comes back to this thing of authenticity. And I thought his suit, and even like the costuming of the other characters, like Christou looked like a medium who was on Saturday Night TV in the 70s, and Carmichael looked like somebody who'd spent his life, starting out as a magician. Do you know what I mean? The velvet jacket, the cravat, like it was perfect. So the AI thing, I actually thought was a lot. Initially, at first, I was like, oh, I wonder if they used AI to do special effects. Maybe that's the controversy. It's actually not. The AI issue with this film is that when it cuts to commercial breaks and there was those little images, and it was like one was a skeleton, one was an owl, there was a couple other things. Those were created by AI.
All right, okay.
So it wasn't actually anything to do with the film, the characters, the special effects. It was the images that you saw as the program cut to a commercial break. Now, you could argue they absolutely could have paid someone to create a poster or, a filler or whatever it was called. And instead they've chosen to, use an AI. I don't think it's the most nefarious use of AI. I think there are other more damaging things. For example, George Carlin's family have recently railed against the fact that there was an AI version of him telling jokes. I think that's far more problematic. If you didn't know they were AI, I don't think it would impact your viewing of the film. And in fact, even knowing that they were AI, it didn't necessarily destroy my viewing experience. I don't know how you felt about it, though.
I didn't even notice it, to be perfectly honest. I didn't realise. I obviously noticed the title cards, or what are they called? Interstitial cards, I think it is. That comes back from silent film, when they had the cards that come up and they had maybe a couple of lines of dialogue or explanation or something on it. It didn't register with me at all, probably because I don't have any sort of background in art or anything. One way or another, it would be computer generated, whether it's generated by a person or whether it's generated by a machine. It didn't even register with me, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, it's almost like an argument for an argument's sake. With like yes, it probably did take away from somebody actually getting paid to do it, but with low budget films such as this, they have to watch every single dollar. So if they can make use of techniques that save money, yes, but when you're doing it, like you say, to write scripts or like say like with George Carlin, that's a kind of a different story, but it's all part of the one debate, I suppose. So yeah, but this is a kind of a small enough film that you get away with it.
I think it's also fair to point out, because as David Dismotion has in several interviews, that this film was made prior to the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and obviously all the debate around AI, that whether that makes people sleep any better at night, I don't know. But I think because it's such a small instance of usage, and as I say, it was made prior to the strikes, I think that's when people feel a bit more comfortable with it. But I do think a lot of people will go into this film and not know who or what made those little title cards.
Yeah, and a lot of what the SAG-AFTRA strike was about was actually generating scripts and actually writing content. It wasn't, doing pictures. You can do that online.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy enough for anybody to put in the correct parameters and get a picture or a piece of art back.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it seems to be very small scale, and like I say, it was before the strike itself. But yeah, it's a tricky area. It really is, especially if you're taking jobs away from people. But
yeah,
if what would happen if they didn't use AI, then they would pay somebody buttons to actually create that anyway. So I don't think there's that much of a difference in terms of what they're actually doing. So yeah, it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, isn't it, really?
I think so, because I don't think it's, as I say, I don't think it's egregious enough that it takes away from your viewing of the film, because I think a lot of people won't even notice it. But equally, it's not detrimental to the viewing of your film. It's not, yes, as I say, they could have hired a graphic designer, but it's not like they're, reviving a dead actor or something that feels just a bit more icky, for want of a better word. They've not used it to write the script. And I think that, again, these are blink and you'll miss it, instances in a sort of film that's telling a much bigger story than this. I understand why it's become a bit of an issue in light of the SAG-AFTRA strikes. But as I say, David Smolshin did come out and say that, this was made beforehand. If they were making it again, they wouldn't use AI, all that sort of thing. So it's not like, I don't know. It's really tricky, because I am very much like, people should be doing people jobs and all that sort of thing. But ultimately, it doesn't take away from your viewing.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know I'm pretty much on the same page as you there. You didn't talk. You mentioned briefly about red herrings in this film. Now, there's a few of them. I thought they were particularly well done, especially at the very start, because he interviewed a guy from the audience, and the person sitting beside him was wearing a full body skeleton costume, and he didn't speak at all, and he was very still, and he didn't really say anything. You kind of thought, is this going to be something that's going to happen? Is this going to recur later on in the film? And it didn't come to anything at all. But they went back to that person a couple of times, especially when, like, as a chat show wants to do before it goes to break, it sort of scans the audience and picks out a few people who are clapping and cheering, and you would see this skeleton guy just sitting there. So I kind of thought, yeah, that was going to be something, and then it didn't come to anything. But then there was a few other bits as well, which one involving Carmichael and how he went about debunking part of the story in the third act, which I won't go into because it kind of starts getting into spoiler territory, and I really don't want to spoil this film. People should go and see it because it's really good. I'll just say that now. They should seek it out, and I really don't want to spoil anybody's enjoyment of it. What we've said has been kind of skirting around the edges of what it's about and everything. So what did you think about the use of red herring or two?
I was fully expecting Skeleton Dude to go toe-on-toe and something really, really bad happen. Especially it's like a really quick cut though, where everyone in the audience is clapping and laughing and having a good time. He's just sat there with his hands in his lap, staring down the barrel of the lens, and I'm like, what is happening? But no, I think it is, because it's not a jump scare film, right? No. It's not that type of film at all. And therefore I did like the fact that there was these wee little nuggets where you were, because you've almost been trained by cinema to expect the big explosion or the big jumping out of the skin moment or whatever it is, and it just doesn't come. But actually that really helps the film build in its tension, because you're in the back of your head, you're going, but what happened to, or where did that guy go? And there's just so many like lovely little moments where they are still in your head throughout the entire film. They don't ever come to anything, but actually it just builds into this like really like uneasy sense of something bad is going to happen here. I mean, there's also just lovely little like touches throughout as well. So not so much red herrings, but like even the fact that his show is called Night Owls. And obviously there's, some imagery later on in the film, and just, as I say, like everything felt very like authentic and based in reality, and just really fucked with your head, I think. And I really like that type of film where you're sitting wondering, you know, what happened to that person? Or, you know, is that because like even Christou sort of disappears, and you know, you don't find out until the third act what's happened there as well. And it's all in your head the entire time. And I love films like that. I love something that's going to mess around with my sense of comfort and ease.
Yeah, it adds so much more to it when these elements are involved. Like say with the owls, one of the early images when they talk about the grove, and there's a picture of a ceremony, and there's a guy standing in the middle, and he's wearing a big owl head, and you're going,
Yeah.
"Oh, night owls, and so you're kind of going, right,
Yeah.
so how is this all? And I'm sure there must be other elements as well, because they're sponsored
Yeah, I feel
by
I want
this
to
group.
rewatch.
Yeah, there's an advert, and it's like for one of the groups that actually sponsors the whole program, and you're thinking, how are they related to that? Is there something there? And I don't think it's never explained. It's never actually added to, or there's any other element of it. You just know that the people from that company are in the audience watching it. But that's it. It's just a throwaway comment after that, and you're going, what does that actually mean? You know, is it something actually? Are they part of the Grove? Are they the people who actually run the company, or all this sort of stuff? So yes, like you say, it adds to it, and it gets you more involved with the film. It just kind of pulls you in that wee bit more.
Especially because as the film progresses, you find out that it was only originally June who was booked to be on the show. She's there to promote her book. She's doing her Liz Trust. She's got her book up the right way, and she's talking about it. But actually, it was Jack that pushed for Lily. You know, he wanted this extra element of, you know, the child who's been possessed by a demon. And even that, just, you're sitting there as an audience member going, why? Why would you invite someone onto your team? And it all just adds into this sort of like this desperation, this frenzy, but also just what the fuck is happening here? And again, it's that. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that going, if it was me, I'd be like, no, keep the demon in the box where she currently lives, because I'm okay with her being there. We can maybe do a satellite broadcast or something. But again, it's these sort of like, he's making these sort of silly decisions, and you're getting like the flashbacks of how aggressive his wife's cancer was, and, you know, the flashbacks of him signing his TV contract, and all of this is just adding to this, you know, you're making these wrong decisions because you're so fueled by all these other elements that are going on. And even like, I feel like they used his wife's death really effectively as well, because obviously she's dying of cancer, so it's a bit unfair to say she looks awful, but what I mean is, like, she looks like a ghoul. Yes. You know, the makeup is very purposeful in its design, and it's obviously meant to draw you into that sort of like, is there a supernatural element to what's going on with her? And just so many questions. I feel like I need to rewatch it. There's so much going on in my wee head right now.
Yeah, there's lots of wee pointers and references in it, I think, which you would get from second viewing. I watched a wee bit of it again this morning, and in the initial sort of 5-minute piece, you see a photograph of his wife from a show, and it says she is the goodbye girl. And right away, you're getting this idea that well, she's not with us anymore. And I think there's a lot of just like quite small pieces in that. And like I say earlier, when they talk about, when Gus is saying about restraints and knives and all sorts of things like that, and you're thinking,
why no one listen to Gus?
Yeah, why would no one listen to Gus? And why would they introduce these elements into a live television broadcast where you want to try and control as much as you can of it in a live situation where things can go wrong? Yeah. I thought it worked particularly well in that way, and it's a good reason for going back and watching it again. It really is. It's got rewatchability. It definitely has.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like there's 1,000 different, you know, little moments, or, you know, maybe even like touches of costume or something that you've just maybe not picked up on first viewing, that I think it really deserves unpicking all of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, bit of a silly question then, but would you recommend this film?
Absolutely. Do you know, it's one of these films where I think the ending is going to divide a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to love it or absolutely not. But there's so much to it. And I think that, David Dismulsion completely carries this film. He is phenomenal in it. And the same goes for the girl that plays Lily. Is it Ingrid Torelli or something? Yeah, Ingrid Torelli, her name is. Just a phenomenal performance, because we've all seen the head spinning, glowy eyes, exorcist shit before. This feels very, very well done. So I think her performance is excellent. But yeah, definitely there's so many little nuances to it, so many, as I say, red herrings and little bits of imagery and stuff like that. Definitely worth checking out.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would completely agree with that. I believe it's that young lady's first major film performance as well.
Wow.
I don't think she's been in too much before that. So
that's impressive.
On that sort of basis, yeah, it's right up there. I think she's been in sort of smaller stuff, things like that, but and no doubt we will see her again, because yes, it was definitely right up there. So yes, I too would recommend this film. I had the recommendation from Mary in the first place to watch it, so thank you very much for that.
A shite bag? I
know. Yeah. So good. Your tastes are slowly changing. I think it's probably got an awful lot.
Getting to me.
Yeah, I think it's probably got an awful lot to do with him. It happened to me a while ago, so it was only a matter of time before it started happening to you as well.
I can't wait till I recommend like Friday the 13th Part 28 has been
that's the thing. See, when you're on Disney watching all these films, now if you go down, it gives you suggestions for all the films, and because they own Fox now, there's all these films like The Hills Have Eyes and all this sort of stuff. So there's an awful lot of dodgy horror films on that one particular service.
Excellent.
And obviously you've got Shudder as well, so yeah.
That's true, yeah.
So yes, there's more than enough to keep it for a long, long time. Simi would be proud. Okay, with that, we have come to the end of the latest Moviescramble podcast. We are on all the normal social media channels. If you'd like to get in touch with us, Facebook and all the usual gubbins are all out there. If you want to drop us an email, you can get us at podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. I'd like to thank the person who sold on our information about that particular email address, and now we're getting all sorts of shite email adverts for absolute nonsense. It's every other day, and because they are spammed emails, they come from accounts that they say they're from a certain account, but they're not from a certain account. They come from all different accounts. It's just completely nuts. So we got all sorts of rubbish coming in there now. So thank you very much for that. Kitchen knives, two-way translators, the #1 pillow in the United Kingdom, the 9-day detox program. Yes, oh yeah.
Do you know what's weird? All of these are relevant to Late Night with the Devil. So you've got your kitchen knives, two-way translator, speak to a demon and a human, pillow for when you need to suffocate her, for when the demon finally gets too much.
Yeah. So getting some real mail might be quite nice as well. But apart from that, it's all good. So that's it from us. We shall be back soon. I believe the next time it will be the 2 Omen films, but we never know. We're looking at a few things. We've still got to try and take a look at Argylle. And now that I've found out that both I and Mary have watched Anatomy of a Fall, we may do that one at some point in the future as well, which would be a very good one to do. So it only leaves for me to say cheerio and thank you very much for your ear holes one more time. Bye.
Bye.